Welcome back, Ray Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk, and great to be back with you. We had arguably an historic development today when we learned that the President of the United States, our President, Obama, had a phone call with President Rouhani of Iran. Joining us now is our good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Cucullu, author and currently president of the Valhalla Project, which works with veterans coming back from the theater of war and back into society and integrating back into society. So once again, as he has in the past and throughout his life and through his work, he is serving those who serve us, and he has served as he was a Green Beret and serving in Vietnam. So, Colonel, welcome back. Great to be with you. You get to serve with your best half now, and that's great too. And you co-authored a book with your wife as well. It is interesting because what you have done is you've really made it a family affair in that way, and it is something you've dedicated your life to. Before we address President Obama and the phone call, your thoughts on service to the country. I was wondering, does it matter when people are looking at the President of the United States, does that influence them if they're going to enlist or not? Do you think that has a major influence?
I think it has a super large influence because of all the role models in the United States, entertainment, sports, politics, business, talk radio, you name it. The President of the United States arguably has one of the premier roles, and to his persona, at least the public perception of his persona, I think is huge as far as even at the subconscious level, Crane, of young men and women saying, would I want to go fight and die for this individual? And I think that we can, in recent times, we can look at the various presidents that we've had and see how that has the morale of the military, because the president is, as the listeners realize, is the commander-in-chief. I think the morale of the military affects the attitude of the commander toward the soldiers. And I think the state of our military right now reflects in part, is a reflection of the attitude that a lot of soldiers have toward the commander-in-chief right now.
There are two clips I'm going to play for you. One is of Ronald Reagan, and the other is of President Obama. This is President Reagan speaking to the issue of peace through strength and, robust defense. Roll it.
It is the responsibility of the President of the United States in working for peace to ensure that the safety of our people cannot successfully be threatened by a hostile foreign power. As President, fulfilling that responsibility will be my number one priority.
All right, so before he takes office, and that was at the convention. Now here is President Obama today discussing his historic phone call with President Rouhani of Iran. Roll it.
The very fact that this was the first communication between an American and Iranian president since 1979 underscores the deep mistrust between our countries, but it also indicates the prospect of moving beyond that difficult history. I do believe that there is a basis for a resolution. Iran's supreme leader has issued a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. President Rouhani has indicated that Iran will never develop nuclear weapons. I've made clear that we respect the right of the Iranian people to access peaceful nuclear energy in the context of Iran meeting its obligations.
Colonel, if we contrast President Reagan's view of trust but verify and, in essence, peace through strength and the declaration of evil empire, tear down this wall approach, walking away from the summit with Gorbachev when it came to the issue of Star Wars. Your thoughts on that, Reagan versus what we have right now in President Obama? Specifically, they both dealt with Iran, as you well know. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think that we need to put the whole thing in context, and as you're doing, Crane, and to follow up on that, I believe that we've seen the results of peace through strength, trust but verify, and that the supposedly unshakable communist monolith crashed right afterwards. The Berlin Wall came down, Eastern Europe was free, and suddenly we didn't have the specter that a lot of us grew up with of the Soviet Union and the United States in some sort of nuclear exchange. Mm-hmm. The world has turned many times since then, and what we have now are, is what's best defined as asymmetrical warfare. But we don't have the sort of moral courage and strength of leadership that we had in those days that was so direly needed and proved itself in the crucible to be the stronger of the policies necessary at the time. We tried détente, we tried appeasement, none of that worked. Finally, simply staring down the Russians and making them realize that they weren't going to triumph any other way, ended up starting the dominoes that crashed the whole affair. In this case, I think what we're looking at is less reality than, shall we say, diplomatic theater. That, as the listeners are aware, the President Obama has been abysmal in his foreign policy on all fronts. He's alienated friends, he's abandoned friends, he's tried to make nice to enemies who have in turn thumbed their nose at him and at the country and made a mockery of himself and the country. What we're seeing here is, and I'm sure we'll see this trumpeted over and over and over again, is his tagline on that clip that you played. This is the first time an American and Iranian president has spoken since 1979. This in itself is going to be hailed, and this is kind of a Cucullu predicts thing. This is going to be hailed as a major foreign policy triumph by the president and his sycophants and the media, because even though it accomplishes nothing, and to me it just shows the naivete of an administration that would actually believe what they're being told. Particularly troubling, by the way, was that part about, the Grand Ayatollah has issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons, therefore there can't be any. Who are we kidding here? And it seems to me that this is not oriented toward Iran in any stretch of the imagination. It was just a fortuitous action that for the president that he took so that he can now pretend that he is a foreign policy expert as opposed to the foreign policy amateur that he really is.
Colonel, you're a historian, and through your work, you've detailed this, and that's what some arguably is necessary in order to form a policy, is not to sit back and say, okay, today we're going to forget the last 30-plus years of why we weren't talking to them, and we're also going to forget what has worked. And as you mentioned, we talked about the evil empire. A lot of people were against that speech. Walking away at Reykjavik. A lot of people didn't think that was the wise move. I guess there are two, really boils down to two approaches. One is, hey, I'm going to engage the enemy. I can talk to them. They are rational actors when it comes to this issue. And in a way, that provided some security, as you could teach me on this, mutually assured destruction with the Soviet Union. But here we have, in essence, people that will welcome in a genocidal Armageddon through their belief system of bringing on the 12th Imam. And in essence, we're treating them as if they are rational and that they have a record of fulfilling their responsibilities and living up to their agreements. Tell me, because there's some people saying, hey, this is great. The president's engaging. This is what we need more of. Everybody talking instead of fighting. Speak to those folks who say, this is a good thing. We're opening up. We're connecting on that level. Why is it not a good thing? And do you believe it will hurt America in a way that we will be able to see, and unfortunately down the line, with a butcher's bill, if you will?
Oh, there will be a butcher's bill here. It's just a question of when. I mean, frankly, I hope we can delay it as long as possible. But it's not going to be one that any of us are going to be happy to see. The whole thing is like a puppet theater. Imagine the shadow players back there. As you adroitly summarized, Crane, we've got 30-plus years of this, the lying, the deception, the sleight of hand coming out of Iran, and yet in what I perceive as a desperation move, even though he would be the last one to say it, President Obama then embraces this deception and becomes part of it by alluding that there may be that there will be a way out of this. A lot of it is very complex. I think it revolves around his failures in foreign policy, as I noted above, and I think it also revolves a lot about his incredible personal narcissism, by which he believes he seems to believe that just his presence, his presence in the room, will be enough to sway our enemies and to bring the light, the darkness into the light. And we all know this is just foolishness. This is not anything that's going to yield any substantive gain. The ones who will gain substantively by this, in my opinion, are going to be the Iranians, because this is going to result in American pressure being taken off of Iran on their nuclear program, and the nations that are working with Iran, for example, North Korea, the People's Republic of China, and the Russians right now, along with some rogue European countries and companies, rather, are going to be kicking up their heels over this in delight, because this means that the next step will probably be for us to relieve sanctions in order to achieve these kinds of negotiations that really only live in the land of the Wizard of Oz, and that seems to be the executive branch of the government right now.
How does Assad factor into this? Here we have a UN resolution, in essence, without teeth, without the enforcement mechanism. We knew that was going to happen because we're talking to the arms dealer to enforce it. People that denied they even had the chemical weapons beforehand, that being Vladimir Putin. Russia, tell me something. When the president does, if the president does seek accountability with Assad, you cannot deal with Assad without impacting Iran, because that's the chief ally of Assad, Syria's Assad. So tell me, how does this all work into the idea of having Assad stay, the Iranian regime using that as a chip, if you will, to say, hey, guess what? You do anything to Assad, that's our ally, and we're going to stop talking.
Oh, I think that I almost think that's a done deal right now. I mean, as you said, Assad is simply a sock puppet for the Iranians, and they're going to go to all lengths to keep him there because they need that influence in that part of the Middle East. The Russians are happy as clams. Putin has already checkmated Obama in the Syrian action because he's moved in there now. He is assumed the role of honest broker, which is, kind of a contradiction in terms in itself. Nevertheless, he's recognized as that, and so we've been effectively neutralized with regard to Assad. I think Assad will certainly stay, and I think that this weakening position, which, the listeners need to realize, look at the history of the last 5-6 years. It's been a series of increasingly weakening U.S. positions, leading from behind, playing on the sidelines, refusing to stand up and be counted, not honoring our moral obligations with allies like Israel or with the missile defense with Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic and Slovakia, and so on and so on. And this is just another nail in that coffin, or if you will, another paving stone on the road to perdition, because none of this is in the best interest of the United States, and in fact, it's anathema to that, and yet it will be triumphed. Mark my words. You're going to start reading op-eds now over the next few days that are going to talk about what an incredible diplomatic success this was, and how this shows that President Obama really is an accomplished foreign policy player. And I think that's the whole bottom line rationale for this ineffectual telephone conversation.
Well, Chamberlain was cheered, and so we can look back, and as you just, I can't put it any better, the road to perdition, as we're paving the way in the sense of the stones that we'll be seeing and saying, why did you do this? Didn't you? History's not repeating itself, but it's rhyming. And I just want to encourage everybody to check out the Colonel's work, because it's important to get a perspective from a soldier's point of view. Separated at Birth, How North Korea Became an Evil Twin. Inside Gitmo, the true story behind the myths of Guantanamo Bay. And his latest, written with his wife, Warrior Police, Rolling with America's Military Police in the World's Trouble Spots. Gordon Cucullu, Chris Fontana, 2011. Valhalla Project. I'll put it back up as always. I've liked it, and I want you to check it out. And Colonel, I'll just end by saying this. Happy birthday. It's a blessing, my friend. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Crane. That was a extraordinarily nice birthday wish that you sent me, and I really do appreciate that. It was heartfelt, and I recognize it.
AFR Talk. Thank you, sir.
Looking